Sthitaprajnan, a person firm in wisdom. If one wants to become top in music, one should emulate a top person in that field. Similarly, if one wants to become a jnani, one should emulate a jnani. The topic Sthitaprajnan helps one who wants to obtain self-realization. Sri Krishna describes the qualities of a jnani for one to emulate and also instruct one to achieve that state. Sthitaprajnan means the one who is established well in the truth, the one who has established himself or herself in one's true self is Sthitaprajnan. Such a person will be immersed in the ocean of bliss and will be well stabilized in wisdom. Sri Krishna first started teaching the Atma Vidya to Arjuna, the difference between the body and the soul, Atma, Anatma, Vivechanam. This comes in the second chapter and we have already studied that. At the end of the teaching, that is, in the 54th verse of the same second chapter, Arjuna asks Sri Krishna, Sthitaprajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya Keshava. O Krishna, how does a Sthitaprajnan, a person who is established in wisdom, will speak and act? What are the lakshanas, marks of one steadfast in wisdom? As an answer to his question, Sri Krishna explains the nature, behavior, the mental condition and the inner condition of a Sthitaprajnan. First, Sri Krishna answers in a nutshell in the verse 55. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyevatmana tushtaha sthita prajnasya tor uchyate. Sri Krishna says in a gist that the one who has totally abandoned desire for sense object and has established well in the self Atman, whose nature is bliss, is called Sthitaprajnan. Then in the subsequent verses, he explains the nature of a Sthitaprajnan in detail. To conquer desire is very hard. We have already seen this under the topic sense control. Desire is the root cause of all suffering, says Bhagavan Buddha. Asai Armin, Ishwan Nodayinum Asai Armin. Meaning, relinquish desire, even with Ishvara, relinquish desire. Tamil sage Tirumular. This is the basic teaching of every religious personality. The nature of the desire is to increase more and more, but it is never ending. There is no limit for desire. Many people may not like this Upadesha, but one should understand that desire for sense objects will take one to the base before one blinks. That is why a sage said, Podum endra maname ponseyum marundu. If one knows when to say enough to desires, he knows the secret of making wealth. Now one may ask, if one should not have desire, then how to live one's life? We have studied this also under the title Karma Yoga. No one says to stop the action. Only the desire should be stopped. Kama means desire. The desire of the senses towards sense objects is called Kama. This Upadesha is for those who want liberation. For family people, dharmic desires are permitted. But here also, one should know where and how to put a bay to it. We have already seen the nature of senses and sense objects earlier. A serious sadhaka, mumukshu, that is, the one who is utterly desirous for liberation, should first withdraw his senses from sense objects. This means he should not go by his mind, but should go by his intellect, buddhi. For example, one should eat to keep the body healthy, to do sadhana, but not go by the taste of the tongue. Again, it does not mean that one should not eat tasty food. The teaching is that you should not go behind it or long for it and feel restless without getting it. A sadhaka is permitted to give healthy and also tasty food to the tongue, which are essential or necessary to maintain one's body. The point is, one should not allow the senses to rule over you. So, the one who wants liberation should have total control over their senses. This habit will naturally make one withdraw one's senses from the sense objects when one starts tasting the Atman, if I can use this word, whose nature is bliss. If a serious sadhaka starts more and more immersing in the true self, less and less he will become desireless to the sense object, whatever it may be. Again, it does not mean that he will not eat good and tasty food if it is given to him. The point is he will not crave for them. Eventually, all of his desires will evanesce, and the mind will be empty of thoughts and be calm and pure. It has been said already that purification of mind is the starting point of sadhana. A very serious, advanced spiritual sadhaka should totally withdraw one's mind from the sense objects and be established in the self. The very word Chittaprajna indicates that the sadhaka is in a very advanced state in the spiritual sadhana. There are two levels in Chittaprajna, sadhana level and siddhi level. In sadhana level, a sadhaka will be practicing and emulating all the qualities of a siddhan, the one who has established well in the wisdom. In the siddhi level, a sadhaka is already well established in the wisdom. What one practiced in the sadhana level will become natural to one in the siddhi level. The point is this: a sadhaka who has glimpsed the state of Chittaprajna needs sadhana to make that state natural, sahaja to him. He should be always alert that he does not slip from that heightened state of awareness. So, he needs sadhana until he establishes himself in the sahaja or natural state. But the one to whom the state of Chittaprajna has become natural, sahaja, does not need sadhana anymore. He is a siddhan, an established one. He has achieved the natural or sahaja state and will be in that state always, effortlessly and naturally, like Bhagavan Ramana. Such people are called Jivan Muktas or liberated ones while living. They do not need further sadhana, says Swami Remaji. Arjuna asked Krishna to describe Astita Prajna, the one who has immersed in wisdom. Sri Krishna replies to Arjuna by describing the perfect sadhaka as follows. Chapter 2, verse 56 says, Dukkeshvanu dvigna manaha sukeshu vigataspruhaha vitaraga bhayakrodaha sthidhir muniruchyate. A sthita prajnan will be having equanimity of mind. He will not be perturbed by adversities. He will neither be elate by worldly happiness nor dejected by adverse conditions. Worldly happiness will be meaningless to him. He will be free from desire, hatred, fear and anger. He will be in constant wisdom. Here the word Muni refers to Sthita Prajnan, the one who has cast off all desires by understanding the truth and be aware of the status of the world as not really real and only the modifications of Prakriti, and turned his mind within and establishes his mind on the unchanging self or the state of witness and experiences an inner happiness is Sthita Prajnan. Chapter 2 verse 57 says, a Sthita Prajnan will be unattached to all the worldly happenings, but react to all with unselfish, pure love. He will not react to good and evil as worldly people will react. He always deals with everything with objective, unattached unselfish, pure love. Love everybody as an end in themselves. It is just opposite to egocentric so-called love. Moreover, he will be established firmly in the self. So, one should not think that a Sthita Prajna would be like a wood or rock without any reaction in the mind. They are self-immersed, world-centered people. In chapter 2, verse 59, a Sthita Prajnan's mind will always turn inwards. Like a turtle, he will withdraw his senses and have full control over his mind. In Ashtavakra Gita, in the beginning itself, it has been said, Vishayan Vishavat Tyaja, meaning relinquish, give up objects as poison. We have only one mind. So, a sadhaka should see that one's mind does not get tainted. This is for advanced sadhaka, not for beginners. Do not give food to the senses. Desire nothing, not even desire moksha. Krishna says such a person will obtain the self. Here, I would like to share a quote from Swami Remaji's Personals. When he was 27 years old, my surface mind was already sacrificed, relinquished long ago. Then in 1940, after I had wandered for 3 months in the forest in North India, I stopped working for my personal liberation and took a decision to live for the world welfare. When I took the Sankalpa decision to dedicate myself totally to the world welfare, determined and said in a true sense, I do not even want my moksha liberation also, in that decisive moment I was liberated. Moreover, Krishna says, a Sthita Prajnan will be unattached to all the worldly happenings but react to all with unselfish, pure love. He always deals everything with objective, unattached, unselfish, pure love. He will love everybody as an end in themselves. It is just opposite to egocentric so-called love. Moreover, he will be established firmly in the self. So, one should not think that a Sthita Prajna would be like a wood or rock without any reaction in the mind. They are self-immersed, world-centered people. In the 69th verse, in a very interesting and amazing one, Ya Nisha Sarvabhutanam Tasyam Jagarti Samyami Yasyam Jagrati Bhutani Sa Nisha Pashyato Munehe. Sri Krishna says, for such an established Sthita Prajnan, what is dark to the worldly person will be for him bright and effulgence. And what is bright for worldly person, to him will be dark. Swami Remaji wrote to a student in 1950, what is now dark will one day become so bright that what is bright now will become a shadow. It means to a worldly person, the world is real and the self is a non-existing myth. For a liberated person, the self will be so bright that this world will be like a shadow. Bhagavan Buddha said, I am awake, but you are all sleeping. Yes, we are all sleeping to our true nature and living a life thinking we are awake. This is what Sri Krishna meant in this sloka. The verse 5 in chapter 18 will be very useful to read along with other advices of Sri Krishna. It is this. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavi Hastini Shunischaiva Swapake Cha Panditaha Samadarshinaha. A Sthita Prajnan who is immersed and unalloyed in the wisdom will be very humble, Vinaya Sampannan, and see all the objects, whatever they may be, a cow or dog or a human being, as God's form, Ishvara Rupam, and be soaked in ecstasy. He will serve the world with love without discrimination As my Guru would say, that one should see the entire known as God's form and treat others with love and respect. The point to be remembered and cherished. A very serious sadhaka desiring moksha should emulate the qualities of a person who is established naturally in that state. The topic Sthitaprajnan is completed. The next topic is Dhyana. Dhyana, going within. The aim of thinking is knowledge. The aim of dhyana is silence or maunam, says Swami Remaji. What is maunam? The usual meaning of maunam is to not to speak with one's mouth. Yes, we say that maunam is not to speak with one's mouth. But what about our mind? Does one's mind not speak all the time? Whether we want it or not, one's mental activities are continuously happening. Then, what is the meaning of Maunam? Maunam is mental silence. Dhyana is mental silence. Mental silence is the goal of dhyana. When there is thought or chitta vritti, it means the mind is speaking. And when there is no thought, it is the silence of the mind, and that is dhyana. That is what is wanted. Generally, dhyana meditation is a thoughtless, dynamic attention upon an object, mental or material. Sage Patanjali in his Yoga Sutra says, Yogaha chitta vritti nirodhaha. The cessation of thoughts is yoga. Then he says, Tataha drashtuhu swarupe avasthanam. When thoughts abate, the knower of the thoughts abides in Swarupa self. He also said, Vritti sarupya mitaratra. The one is in the form of vritti by dhyana. The meditator will become the object of meditation, that is, the dhyata attains the dhyeya rupa. Yat bhavo tat bhavati, meaning according to one's belief, one experiences. So, for dhyana to be possible, first one's mind should be cleaned. When the mirror is dirty, one cannot see one's face. But when it is clean, one can see one's face. Similarly, one's mind should get clean. Chitta Shuddhi is essential for dhyana to be possible. We have already studied the importance of Chitta Shuddhi. To know oneself, one should turn one's seeing inward. One should look behind, as it were. Bhagavan Ramana says, Tirumbi aham tanai dinam ahakkan kan teriyum. Ahakkan means inner eye. God, who is behind us, is called Pratyagatman. To turn one's mind inward, one's mind should be clean and peaceful. For that, the control over the senses should be achieved. We have already studied the importance of sense control. One should understand that all the sadhanas are interlinked. In chapter 6, verse 34, Arjuna says to Krishna, it is difficult to control one's mind. It is moving fast here and there like wind. Sri Krishna agreed with him and said, Asamshayam mahabaho mano durnigraham chalam. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. You are right. But without controlling one's mind, one cannot achieve yoga. Mind is always restless, no doubt about it. But by abhyasa and vairagya, that is, by repeated practice and dispassionate attitude, it may be tamed, restrained. If one patiently and methodically performs sadhana, one could bring the mind under control. Thought will come from all directions when one does dhyana. The mind will travel far away from the place of dhyana. So, one should patiently go behind it and bring it back to the original place and start the dhyana. Swami Remaji used to say this example for how to make the mind without thoughts. Say, people are talking and making noise in a hall. At that time, one person gets up and makes a very big sound, and the crowd stops talking, and the hall becomes noiseless. But that one sound should be very powerful. Then only the other noises will stop. Similarly, our mind should produce one strong thought, and the thought should be on God, Ishvara. That will stop all other thoughts. It is called Eka Vritti Anusandhanam. Patanjali Yoga Sutra explains this. It is called Ashtanga Margam. It gives elaborate instructions to establish in one powerful thought. So, mind control is very essential for meditation. In chapter 6, verse 36, Sri Krishna says a person who does not control his mind will not attain Yoga Siddhi. It is Krishna's conviction, Kolgai, Tamil word, that only the one who controls a mind with proper method will get Dhyana Siddhi. The point to be understood is this. One should not suppress the mind. One should sublate, remove the mind. For example, if one gets fever, one should not suppress it. Therefore, one pointed mind is necessary for dhyana to be successful, and mind should be purified for that. The object of meditation could be material or mental. By repeated practice and dispassionate attitude, one can control the mind. Now the question is, where should one locate God? In the following two verses, Sri Krishna says to locate God in one's heart region and meditate. In chapter 15, verse 15, Krishna says, meditate upon me as your Antaryami, the inner ruler and controller, who is ever present with you in your heart. Moreover, Sri Krishna says that yoga is not possible for one who eats too much or for one who abstains too much from eating. Yoga is not for one who sleeps too much or too little. He who is moderate in eating and recreation, temperate, self-restraint in his action, who is regulated in sleep and wakefulness, meditation becomes the destroyer of sorrow. Another point that Krishna says is that a yogi sadhaka should always be in solitude with one pointed mind. Having subdued his mind and body and got rid of desires and possessions, his mind should be fixed on self. Correction of one's activities and thoughts are the base for improvement in the meditation of self, Atma Jnana Sadhana. Moreover, Sri Krishna speaks about how one should prepare oneself to practice meditation in the chapter 6. He says a sadhaka should choose a clean and quiet place and make an asana neither too high nor too low. He should spread kusha grass and a deer skin and a cloth one over the other. He should sit erect and concentrate on the tip of his nose. Serene and fearless, firm in the vow of a brahmachari, he should sit in concentrating and thinking of him, Krishna, and he alone. Sitting there on his seat, making the mind one-pointed and with senses fully controlled, he should practice yoga for self-purification. In the same chapter 6, verse 28, here Sri Krishna says, as phalasruti, the fruit of sadhana, is obtained by one whose mind is always in Atma Dhyana and will obtain bliss with Brahma Dhyana. In chapter 5, verse 25, Sri Krishna says how a highest sadhaka who had obtained Brahma Jnana would be. His sins would be destroyed. There would not be any doubt in his mind. He would be above dualities. His mind would be disciplined. He would be delighted in the welfare of all beings. Sarva bhuta hite rataha. Such a yogi would obtain Brahma Nirvana, the supreme beatitude state of Brahman. He will be in absolute freedom, the eternal foundation of the entire phenomenon. Sri Krishna uses the word Brahma Nirvana in several places. With sins destroyed, doubts removed, minds disciplined, being delighted in the welfare of all beings, Sarva Bhuta Hite Rathaha, the rishis, jnanis, attain the Brahma Nirvana, the supreme beatitude state of Brahman. Such a yogi will obtain Brahma Nirvana, absolute freedom, the eternal foundation of the entire phenomenon. Sri Krishna uses the word Brahma Nirvana in several places. Sadguru Swami Remaji has said in the beginning of this topic that the goal of dhyana is maunam. Now he explains the goal of dhyana in another way. He says the goal of dhyana is to attain God. How to attain God? By nama japa, by repetition of the sacred name of God. He asks us to take one name of God and try to increase its rasa, taste, by all means. Nama ruchi. When one utters the name of God, it should taste sweet or be full of rasa. Like the tongue, the mind also searches for rasa. That is why one should try to increase the rasa of the name. For that, one should make the name more and more rich by adding rasa to it, says the Swami. The japa of a name of God will subside all the worldly thoughts. But that one name should be full of rasa. That is important. Now the question is how to improve the rasa of the name of God. One should improve the rasa by understanding the three substances, Tattvatraya, namely God, individual and world, and their inseparable connection. An example for increasing rasa in God's name. Take a person who does not know anything about Indian culture. An Indian asks him to utter the name of Rama. In the beginning, the name was just a sound to him. Then the Indian tells the story of Rama and all the tattvas that go with the name Rama. Now the person, when he utters the name, will get rasa in uttering the name of Rama. If he increases the rasa in the name of Rama, it will grip his mind and all other thoughts will subside. But it is not that easy. Ishvara is above name and form, but one can worship him by name and form, nama rupa, for one to have a living connection with him. Once he has achieved the connection, he should contemplate on Ishvara in his abhyakrita formless consciousness state, Satchitananda. This is important. One can contemplate on the form of a liberated guru, but once the contemplation gets matured, one should shift it to Akhanda Satchitananda Chaitanya, which is his reality. Sadguru Swami Remaji gives certain instructions that will help to get into the mood of dhyana. 1. Vishaya dosha darshanam Vairagya sadhanam means to see the defects in all the sense objects is the way to get dhyana mood. 2. One should always remember that one is the lord of his mind and dominate the mind instead of going behind it, which is apt to slide into unrighteousness if unchecked. Mano nigraham or vairagya. 3. One should always remember that the world is Bodhana Kshetram, a learning center, and one's body is the Sadhana Yantram, a device for doing spiritual sadhana. 4. Before starting dhyana, one can place all the problems to God and then start sadhana. It will also help. Meditation is the art of being conscious, disemploying the mind. Watching breath is one way of disemploying the mind. As there is nivritti way or ways of going within, there is pravritti way of going within also. The pravritti way of going within consists in thinking properly about persons and objects of the world. What does it mean by thinking properly? In short, true knowing or yathartha jnanam, that is knowing things as they really are, of whatever one knows, is that employment of the mind which does not bind. Right understanding and right knowing regarding the 5 truths, which are about God, individual's body, ego, and life, are the best pravritti atma dhyana sadhana that IPIL Siddhanta recommends. The points to be understood and cherished. The nature of senses is to go outward and grasp sense objects. One should learn to turn within by cleansing the outgoing mind. The topic Dhyanam is completed. The next topic is Krishna Swarupam.
Krishna Swarupa, meaning Krishna's true self. Krishna's true self is the topic that we are going to enjoy now. In other words, how Sri Krishna wants us to know Him is the topic we are going to understand. While we analyze and try to understand Sri Krishna's Swarupa, it will also make us understand Ishvara Swarupa. How? It is because Krishna's self is Ishvara. We have already studied that Sri Krishna's self is Ishvara and Ishvara's self is Brahman. All the sadhanas that are so far we have studied will become easier if we understand Krishna's true self. That will easily fix our minds on Ishvara. So, it is important to know Krishna's Swarupa. In Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says He is Ishvara. Let me put it this way. If we understand Ishvara, we can understand Krishna better and vice versa. Most of us know Krishna only through his life story. If we put the question on a normal Krishna Bhakta, do you know how Krishna wants you to know Him? He may get stuck. But one need not worry about it because Krishna Himself tells us about who He really is, and that is how we should try to understand Sri Krishna's Swarupa. In chapter 4, verse 6, Krishna says, Ajopi sanna abhayatma bhutanam ishvaropi sanna prakritim swam adhishtaya sambhavami atma mayaya. I am Ishvara, the Lord of the universe, wearing Prakriti as my covering. I assume human form on my own accord. Then Sri Krishna describes who Ishvara is in the chapter 15, verse 17. Yo lokatrayam avishya viparti abhyaya Ishvaraha. He who is eternal, He who is the soul of souls, He who is the Lord of the creation, he who pervades the entire creation, sustaining them, is Ishvara. In the next verse, Sri Krishna says, he is above Prakriti and Purusha. That confirms Krishna is Ishvara. God is Purushottama and we are Purushas. God is Paramatma and we are Jivatmas. God is Ishvara and we are Ishvara Putras. God is the Lord and we are his offspring. There are many shlokas in Gita where Sri Krishna explains his Ananta Kalyana Gunas, great unparalleled attributes. Devotees could select all of them and write them in a notebook and enjoy their meaning. This is my humble suggestion. Here I have taken up some selected attributes of Krishna so that it will help us to understand and soak in Krishna's Swarupa or Ishvara Swarupa. In the Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara and Brahman are not spoken as two different entities, and Krishna says he is Ishvara. That shows that Krishna is Brahman. That shows that Krishna is both Brahman and Ishvara. How? Swami Remaji explains like this. Brahman is objectless consciousness and Ishvara Swarupa is Brahman and Ishvara Rupa is the world, Jagat. Ishvara is Nitya Mukta, ever liberated one. That means he knows his Brahma Swarupa always. So, if one obtains Ishvara, we will also obtain the state of Brahman, the objectless consciousness. Ishvara is both the player and the Sakshi, witness of his play. So, that shows that Brahma Jnanam will come along with Ishvara Sakshi Jnanam. But one should know the distinction between Brahman and Ishvara because Brahman is objectless consciousness, whereas Ishvara is witness of the objects and knows the objects as his play. This understanding is crucial. One should never forget this, says the Swami, and gives us a couple of rough examples. The son wants to go to a show, but only with his father. The mother says, "You come with me to the show. Your father will also come with me because wherever I go, your father will be there with me. If you want your father to take you alone to the show, it will be very difficult. You can try, but it is hard." So, Ishvara Siddhi will also give us Brahma Siddhi. To put it differently, letter B is AB, that is B is AB. A is hard to catch. If you catch B, A will also come along with B. Here, Ishvara is B and Brahman is A. So, if one contemplates on Ishvara and lives for Ishvara, this is very important, to live for Ishvara, one will also get the state of Brahman. True, Ishvara has activities, kriyas, but he is the Lord of creation. The activities will not affect him because he knows his Brahma Swarupa. In the topic Tattvatrayam, we have already studied about Ishvara. Here we are going to enjoy little more about Ishvara, Ishvara Swarupa, from Sri Krishna's own words. Sri Krishna says he is the creator of the universe, that is Ishvara. In chapter 10 verse 8, Krishna says, "Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattah sarvam pravartate." I am the creator of the universe, protector and evolver, and also the absorber of my creation in Pralaya. Sri Krishna says he is the inner ruler and controller. In chapter 15 verse 15, Sri Krishna says, "Sarvasya cha aham hridi sannivishtaha." I am seated in the hearts of all as Antaryami. Moreover, in the chapter 18 verse 61, Sri Krishna says, "Ishvaraha sarvabhutanam hriddeshe tishtati." Seated in the hearts of all, Ishvara manipulates the entire world. Now one may ask, which God is seated in the hearts of all? The answer is, the one God who is the creator of your body as well as the entire living being. He is God. But God is beyond forms. One cannot conceive God and know God as an object. Those who can have living relation with God, who is invisible, is well and good. But if one wants a form of God to have living relation with Him, God of any religion can be placed in one's heart, but that form should refer to the one God who is the creator of your body. Ishvara is your inner ruler and controller. Next, Sri Krishna says, He is the Divine Father, Paramapita of all. In chapter 9, verse 17, Sri Krishna says, Pitaham asya jagataha. I am the Divine Father of all of you. Here, I am stressing the aspect of father. Arjuna also says, Piteva putrasya. O Lord, please bear with me as a father with a son. But in truth, God is all in one for us. Saint Meera sings, Tata, Mata, Bhrata, Bandhu, Apano no koi. Ammaye, Appa, Uppila, Maniye. Anbil vilainda Aramude, says Manika Vachakar. Even Bhagavan Ramana sings, Ammayum Appanumai Enai Bhumiyil Aaki Alithu. In fact, God is the only relation to all of us. There is a famous sloka from Pandava Gita, Tvameva Matacha Pita Tvameva, Tvameva Bandhuscha Saka Tvameva, Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva, Tvameva Sarvam Mamadeva Deva. The Lord is our Father, Mother and all in one. God and we are related as Divine Father and His offspring. How? As a father impelled by paternal love wants to develop his son to attain his own likeness and become big and strong, Ishvara, out of love and compassion for us, is evolving us through our earthly life to know our true identity and obtain our non-dual oneness with Him. As a soul, we all have the privilege to love God as our Father and serve Him as a master forever. As a soul, we can merge with God. The next Krishna says, He is the giver of the fruits of action, karma phala data. In chapter 9, verse 8, Sri Krishna says, Animating my Prakriti, I send forth again and again the countless deluded souls to this world according to their karma. In the very next verse, Sri Krishna says, Karma cannot touch me. Nachamam tani karmani nibagnanti. In the presence of Ishvara, Prakriti executes his will. The law of God is called Ishvara Niyati. The world is working according to God's law, and God's law is working according to our choices. Yes, we have modicum of freedom, that too given by God. This we can know from Krishna's words itself. After teaching Arjuna all the wisdoms, at the end, Krishna told Arjuna in chapter 18, verse 63, I have told you the truth, Arjuna. Now you act as you like. Yata ichchasi tata kuru. So, God is karma paladhata, giver of the fruits of one's action, and karma dhyakshan, the Lord of karma. Next, Sri Krishna says, He is impartial, samadarshi. In chapter 9, verse 29, Sri Krishna says, Samoham sarvabhuteshu. I have the same love for all the creatures. Behind my creation, there is same love for all. I am impartial, says Sri Krishna. Moreover, in chapter 5, verse 29, Suhurdam sarvabhutanam yatva mam shantim richati. Suhurdam sarvabhutanam, he says, I have the same good will for all. Now I remember the words of my revered Guru, who wrote me in a letter in 1988, Never doubt my 100% goodwill for you. I am 100% goodwill for all. I am goodwill itself. Though Ishvara is impartial, one can make him personal by one's devotion. Moreover, in chapter 7, verse 21, Sri Krishna says, Yo yo yam yam tanum bhaktah. Whatever form a devotee of God may worship, I will bless them and make their faith firm. This shows Sri Krishna's approval of all different paths to God, Sarva Mata Sammatam, and his impartial blessings on all the sincere devotees in different paths all over the world. My Guru says there is a central common code among the wisdom of different religions. Sri Krishna says he is the bestower of liberation, Mukti Dhata. In chapter 7, verse 29, Sri Krishna says, those who take refuge in me will be liberated from samsara that consists of old age, hunger, grey hair and sickness. And if one sincerely surrenders to me, I will relieve him or her from this cycle of births and deaths. So, Ishvara is Muktidata. Next, Sri Krishna says he is all-pervading, Sarva-Vyapi. In chapter 9, verse 4, Sri Krishna says, Maya tadamidam sarvam jagadavyaktam murtina. The entire world is pervaded by me in my unmanifested form, Avyakta Murti, but I do not exist in them. They exist in me, but I do not exist in them. In chapter 7, verse 7, Mayi sarvamidam proktam sutre manigana iva. Sri Krishna says, as various gems tied in a string in a row or inseparable to the string, the entire world is inseparably tied to me, says Krishna. This means every object is connected to Ishvara inseparably. We are connected to Ishvara inseparably. Ishvara is Sarva-Vyapi, meaning all-pervading. Next, Sri Krishna says, he is all-knowing, Sarvagyan. In chapter 7, in the verse 26, Vedaham Samatitani, Sri Krishna says, I am the knower of all the past, present and future, but no one knows me. In the chapter 4, verse 5, Sri Krishna says to Arjuna, O Arjuna, many are the lives we experienced together. I know them all. You do not know. Ishvara is all-knowing. He is omniscient. A liberated person is omniscient. Let me say an anecdote from Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi's story. Once in Ramanashrama, a devotee brought laddus as an offering to Bhagavan Ramana. Ramana took a little bit of it and then asked his attendant Annamalai to distribute the laddus to the devotees. Annamalai gave the laddus to everyone who were present in the hall and then went out in search of people to give the prasada. Finally, he went behind the temple in search of devotee. Nobody was there. He took one laddu and ate it. It was his share. It was so delicious, so he took another laddu and ate it, which was not right. Everyone gets only one, but he helped himself with two. Then he walked towards the hall where Bhagavan and the devotees were and placed the plate before Ramana and stood with folded hands. Ramana looked at him and said, Oh, you worshipped yourself with two laddus. Annamalai trembled and thought, how did he know that I ate two laddus? Nobody was there when I ate it. So, one should never forget that God is everywhere and always watching everything. Next, Sri Krishna says, he is Adi Guru, eternal Guru, the enlightener. God is the first teacher of all of us. Taught by him, the other teachers teach. This is taught in Vedanta that Ishvara is the Adi Acharya. This idea is explicitly present in Quran and Christianity. More explicitly so in former, says Swami Remaji. In the chapter 4, verses 1 and 2 of Gita, Sri Krishna says that Atma Vidya was taught by him to Aditya, and then in turn he taught it to Manu, and Manu to Ichvaku, and so on. This makes us understand that Ishvara is the first Guru, the first enlightener. Sri Krishna taught the same Atma Vidya to Arjuna in the form of Bhagavad Gita. Swami Remaji says that Ishvara is the source of all wisdom. By playing our persons, he is removing our ignorance. He is constantly teaching us. I think we are all poor learners. Sri Krishna says he is the eternal seed, Bijam. In chapter 7, verse 10, Sri Krishna says, Bijam mam sarvabhutanam vidhi partha sanatanam. I am the eternal and unchanging seed underlying all my creation. The world is projected from Ishvara's cosmic mind. The worldly seed will die when the plants grow. But the seed of the world, who is Ishvara, will never die when the creation is projected. Next, Sri Krishna says he is consciousness, spirit or Chaitanyam. In chapter 2, verse 20, Sri Krishna says he is Atman. Atman is consciousness. Atman has no birth and death because Atman is spirit, consciousness. Sri Krishna says in chapter 9, verse 11, Avajananti mamudha manushim tanumashritam parambhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. Sri Krishna says, people who are thickly deluded will not recognize me as Ishvara. Here, a point to be understood is this. Consciousness does not take varieties, but the adjunct upadhi with which it has been associated has varieties. So, Ishvara should be understood as Chaitanyam, meaning consciousness. So, sum up. So, one should soak oneself in the attributes of Krishna as the creator, maintainer and absorber of the universe that we live in, the inner ruler and controller, the dispenser of the fruits of our actions, the one who has same love for all, the bestower of liberation, the all-pervading one, the support of the entire creation, the seed of the creation, the unparalleled Lord of heaven and earth, the all-knowing, the all-pervading cosmic consciousness, as the player of the world and the witness of his play, and as the foundation of everything, or Brahman. According to my Guru, the most important attribute to contemplate Ishvara is Antaryami, the inner ruler and controller of all. He said, this is very important. The point to be understood and cherished. Make the mind immersed in the divine attributes of Sri Krishna. It will confer purity of mind and an auspicious life. The topic Krishna Swarupa is completed. The next topic is Mat Chitta. Mat Chitta, the qualification to obtain Sri Krishna. We already saw how Krishna wants us to know him. Now we are going to see how Krishna wants us to be, or the qualifications that are needed to obtain atonement with the Lord. Sri Krishna himself tells us the qualifications to obtain him in 2 words, Mat Chitta. Keep me in your mind, says Krishna. In chapter 10, verse 9, Mat Chitta Madghada Prana Bodayantaha Parasparam Katayantascha Mam Nityam Tushyanti Cha Ramanti Cha. If you want to obtain me, Krishna says, always remember me, love me above all, or in short, keep your mind always in me. What does it mean by Mat Chitta? To have one's mind completely on Sri Krishna is what is indicated by the word Mat Chitta. Krishna himself says how such mind would be. If we understand and cultivate the qualities that Krishna wanted in us, would help us to possess the qualities that Sri Krishna wanted in us. The very important quality that Krishna wants in a devotee is not to forget him while in waking and in dreaming. Saint Jnana Sambandar says, Tunjalum tunjal illada povidilum nenjagam naindu ninaimen naldorum. That is, in waking and also in sleeping, remember God. Another great quality that Krishna expects in a devotee is to be always in his service. Always remember him and always to be in his service. These two are important, remembering him and serving him. One may ask, is it possible to have such a mind? Yes, it's possible. Saints all over the world exhibit such wonderful qualities. To contemplate Krishna intelligently as he wants us to be, we should correct our actions, our thoughts, our knowing, and live wisely. If one does so, then the contemplation of Sri Krishna will be easier. Therefore, the order goes in this way. 1. Correction of action. 2. Correction of mind, thoughts. 3. Correction of knowing. 4. Wise living. And 5. Contemplation. A sincere devotee should not forget these 5 points. We have already seen that to give our minds to Sri Krishna is the way to attain Krishna. This is what Sri Krishna means when he says Macchitta. Actually, giving one's mind to Krishna is to give oneself to Krishna. It is called Atma Samarpanam or Atma Nivedanam. It is called total surrender. Sri Krishna himself says in chapter 9 verse 22, Ananyas chintayanto mam yejana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogatshemam vahamyaham. Sri Krishna says, those who worship me alone, thinking of nobody else, ever devout, totally committed to me, I take care of their well-being here and hereafter. Swami Remaji says it means one should not live for oneself. One should live for God. One should live for Ishvara. One should perform one's activities for Ishvara and not for oneself, with the attitude that God is the real doer prayer and I co-read with him, I co-do with him. Actually, this is the first part of Karma Yoga. And one should perform the action without attachment to the results. And this is the second part of Karma Yoga. Without attachment means Ishvara Prasada Buddhi. That is, to accept whatever the result of one's action as the gift from God. This quality goes with Samabhava, equipoise, and to live righteously in Dharma. This is the worship of God in action, says Swami Remaji. The right understanding of Karma Yoga and Samabhava will help one here. This is a simple but very powerful sadhana. If one can live for God and not for oneself, if one can have pure love and concern for the entire humanity as belonging to God, if one can leave bad company and move only with good people, then Krishna will take him to his abode, says the Swami. Here, the word bad is not only adharmic or unrighteous people, but also people who have deluded notion about everything. Such person's company is called Kusanga or Asatsang. In chapter 8 verse 8, Sri Krishna says that if one, after controlling the mind and senses, steadfast in his self and meditate on the Supreme, obtains the resplendent Purusha. Here we may have a question. In some places, Sri Krishna says to the devotees, you will reach him, meaning the Supreme. And in another place he says, you will reach me. Which one is right? The answer is both of them are right. This shows that Krishna does not distinguish himself from Ishvara and Brahman. This point we have seen many times in different ways, but it is worth repeating. In chapter 7, verse 30, Sri Krishna indicates the correction of knowing. What is that correction? Swami Remaji says, to know the entire known as God's form. This is the correction of knowing that will remind one to be always thinking of God. That remembrance will follow at the time of one's death also. In chapter 18, verse 65, Sri Krishna tells what a true devotee should do. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. A true devotee should always have Krishna in one's mind, one's remembrance, have unalloyed devotion to Krishna, perform all the activities as offering to Krishna, prostrating before his rupa and also submitting oneself to Krishna in his mind. If a devotee does so, he or she will cross over the Maya and be in at one ment with Ishvara. Sri Krishna says it is a promise. So, the qualification to obtain Sri Krishna are described by Sri Krishna himself in Gita, some of which we have seen in this topic. The point to be understood and cherished, the desire for sense objects should be turned towards God and God alone. That will remove one's carnal attachments and make one obtain oneness with God. The topic Matchitta is completed. The next topic is Same Priyaha. Same Priyaha. How to elicit Krishna's smile. Generally, all devotees want to be dear to Krishna. But who would be really dear to Krishna? That is the question. Krishna himself gives a list of qualities and says a person who possesses those qualities would be dear to him. The topic Same Priyaha deals with the qualities that Sri Krishna would expect from his devotee. Now, let me turn the question this way. What a sincere devotee wants from Krishna? A sincere devotee of Krishna will desire only one thing, that is to get his smile of approval from Sri Krishna by the way she or he is living. A sincere devotee of Krishna will want only one word from beloved Krishna, and it is the word, "You are mine." The true devotees only want two things from Krishna, a smile and a word, "You are mine." How to get such a smile and the most blessed words from Krishna? First of all, is it possible? If so, how should one's actions and thoughts be? Sri Krishna did not give us any difficult exam to find it out. He himself tells us what all qualifications one should have to elicit his smile and obtain the blessed word. In chapter 12, verse 13 and 14, Sri Krishna says, who is dear to him? Same Priyaha. Sri Krishna says, he who does not hate any living being, compassionate and friendly to everyone, without ego and delusion, be equal-minded in pleasure and pain, and be patient, such persons are dear to me. Same Priyaha. Further he says, he who is always happy in his heart, have firm knowledge in the self without any doubts, have devotion to me, with mind and intellect dedicated to me, he is dear to me. Same Priyaha. In chapter 12, verse 15, Sri Krishna says, he who never ever does harm to the world, who does not suffer by the misbehavior of others, who is unaffected by pleasure, anger, fear, and anxiety, he is dear to me. Same Priyaha. In chapter 12, verse 16, Sri Krishna says, not desiring anything worldly, pure in speech, mind and action, Trikarana Shuddhi. This is more important. What you think, you speak, and what you speak, you do. ராமலிங்க சுவாமிகள் அவர் ஒரு தடவை சொன்னார், உள்ளொன்று வைத்து புறமொன்று பேசுவார், உறவு கலமாமை வேண்டும்னா. அதுதான் திரிகரண சுத்தி உள்ளவாளோடு தான் சேர்ந்து இருக்கணும்னு சொல்கிறார். And physically and mentally with admirable ability, without taking sides, without mentally suffering, abandoning all desirous activities, steadfast in devotion to me, is dear to me. Same Priyaha. In chapter 12, verse 17, Sri Krishna says, he who does not elate or hate, who does not grieve, does not desire anything, who has renunciate good and bad karmas with full of devotion to me, is dear to me. Same Priyaha. In chapter 12, verse 18 and 19, Sri Krishna says, he who has equal mind towards foes and friends, equal mind in honor and dishonor, keeps one's mind equal in abuses and praises, and in cold and hot weather, keeps away from the crowd, is dear to me. Moreover, he says, he who keeps even mind when people praise or censure, always contented, speaks only when necessary, possessing only bare minimum, steady-minded, and with full of devotion to me, is dear to me. At the end, Sri Krishna says that the one who has faith in all the nectar-like dharmic attributes that he had said so far, with faith, and apply them in one's life, always devoted to him, and have him alone as one's goal of life, and live one's life according to it, is very, very dear to him. Ativa me priyaha. It has been said earlier that to give one's mind to Krishna is the way to obtain Krishna. To give one's mind to Krishna is the way to obtain Krishna. Giving one's mind and giving oneself are the same. It is called Atma Nivedana. Let me conclude this topic by narrating a beautiful poem of Saint Manikavachakar. The poem goes like this. Tantadu undannai, kondadi endannai, Shankara yarkolo chaturer. Andamondrillada anandam petreen, yadondru pettradu nee enpal. O Lord, we had a bargain. You told me, if I give myself to you, you will give yourself to me. And I said, okay. And I gave myself to you. And you gave yourself to me. Now, in this bargain, who is the real benefiter? Putting this question, the saint himself answers with a pun in his word. Certainly not you, my Lord. Sorry. Because I have got endless bliss. But what did you get out of me? Oh my! What an intimate devotion. To be understood and cherished, to obtain Shri Krishna's smile, one should possess all the great qualities that Krishna has mentioned throughout the Gita with unalloyed devotion to him. The topic Same Priyaha is completed. The next topic is Sharanagati. Sharanagati, surrender. After teaching many different ways of spiritual practices, finally at the end of Gita, in the chapter 18 verse 66, Sri Krishna says to Arjuna, and through him to the entire humanity, an amazing unparalleled word of declaration, Sarvadharmana parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarvapapebhyo mokshayishyami masucha. Krishna said, renounce all dharmas and take refuge in me alone. I shall liberate you from all sins. Grieve not, Arjuna. In one shot, Krishna cancels all sadhanas and tells us the secret of Sharanagati, surrender. The amazing final words of Sri Krishna is utter surrender to Him. Surrender means Sharanagati in Sanskrit. The word Sharanagati, Prapatti, Atmanivedanam, Atmasamarpanam, Nyasa Vidya, Bharanyasa are all synonyms, meaning unconditional surrender to the Lord. In one way, surrender is the principal endeavor of all the spiritual practices, and all other sadhanas are its limbs. Surrender has to be done only after understanding the relation between God, soul, and the world, that is Tattvatrayam. Surrender to God is not just prostrating before the picture of God. This loving gesture of prostrating before the idol of the Lord is not belittled. It is very good and it has got its own merit. But that is not the real surrender. So, first one should understand the concept of surrender in its correct form. The real surrender is to surrender one's soul to Ishvara. It is called Atma Samarpana. Now, our experience is that we are the body. So, what we should surrender is, I am the body mental notion. In other words, we should surrender our ego to God. There is a wonderful bhajan by Saint Meera, Govinda Leno Mole. In that she declares, "Oh Mother, I know how to get my Lord Giridhari. I have got him. It is easy. What I did, I weighed him in a scale and paid the price and got him. What is the price? It is myself," says Meera. I gave myself to Govinda and brought him. This is Atma Nivedana. To do Atma Samarpana, first one should understand the three great substances, God, world, and the individual, in the light of the truth. Next comes purification of mind. To surrender one's soul to Ishvara, one's mind should be first pure. To obtain purity of mind, first the accretions in one's mind should be removed. Then one should work for the removal of one's delusion. Now, one thinks that one is the body due to delusion. So, the thinking, I am the body, mental delusion should be corrected first by understanding and accepting that it is God's property. Andavanuடைய சொத்து, God's property and not me. Then, who are you? You are God's offspring, a conscious being. All the thinking that stem out from I am the body notion should be changed. And I am an offspring of God. I am a conscious being. I am an immortal soul should be replaced and affirmed. That should become natural to one. All one's thinking should spring from that understanding of oneself. The entire thought process should work in a new way. That is, one's thoughts should spring from the truth, I am an offspring of God. Now, let us go to the very first teaching of Sri Krishna to Arjuna. Sri Krishna's starting Upadesha to Arjuna is Atma Anatma Vivechanam. And after teaching many sadhanas like Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Samabhava, Jnana, and so on, and finally, at the end, in the chapter 18, verse 66, Sri Krishna declared, Sarvadharmanu parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Renounce all dharmas and take refuge in me alone. I shall liberate you from all sins. Grieve not, Krishna said. In one shot, Krishna cancelled all sadhanas and reveals the secret of surrender. The amazing final words of Krishna is utter surrender to him. It is called Atma Samarpana, but unless one's mind is prepared for doing Atma Samarpanam, unless one's thoughts are pure and spring from the truth premise, it is not possible to surrender. The art of surrender is hard, like any other sadhana, but it is sweet in nature, because in surrender we do everything to please our beloved Krishna. That will make the sadhana easy. In chapter 9, verse 22, Sri Krishna says, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogatshemam vahamyaham. Krishna says, if your mind thinks only of me and nothing else, I will take care of your well-being here and hereafter. Here one should understand that all of one's worldly attachments to people and possessions should be relinquished to obtain God. The order is this: 1. Listening to the truths, Tattvatrayam. 2. Purifying one's mind, Chitta Shuddhi. 3. Unconditional surrender, Sharanagati. 4. Living one's life after surrendering to God, Dharmika Jivanam. There is a wonderful Tamil poem by Appar Swamigal in this line, where he imagines himself as a female devotee. I will just narrate the poem. முன்னம் அவனது நாமம் கேட்டாள், மூர்த்தி அவனிருக்கும் வண்ணம் கேட்டாள், பின்னை அவனது ஆரூர் கேட்டாள், பெயர்த்தும் அவனுக்கே பிச்சையானாள், அன்னையும் அத்தனையும் நீத்தாள் அன்றே, அகன்றாள் அயலிடத்து ஆச்சாரத்தை, தன்னை மறந்தாள் தன் நாமம் கெட்டாள், தலைப்பட்டாள் நங்கை தலைவன் தாளே. In short, he advises us through his poem, listen to the truth. Next, prepare yourself to do surrender, and then do unconditional surrender to the Lord. It is most difficult to relinquish one's attachment to one's possessions. There is a small anecdote in Jesus' life, somewhat like this. Once a man approached Jesus and said, "Sir, I am living my life from my childhood as per the instructions of Moses. What else should I do to obtain God?" Jesus said, "Relinquish all your possessions and follow me." The man silently left the place. It is that hard to leave attachment to one's possessions. Once my guru told me a humorous example. I do not remember the exact words. It is this. A devotee cried to Narayana, "Oh Narayana, oh Lord, take me to Vaikunta. I am unable to come myself. Will you come and take me?" Narayana listened and asked Garuda, "Go and bring him to me." Garuda came near the man. He saw the man standing with several suitcases to take with him. Garuda said stiffly, "The order is to bring you alone, not with all your possessions." The man's mind refuses to do so, and Garuda left. Garuda is grace. Suitcases are attachments to worldly things. Only if we leave this, we can obtain that. That is why Sri Krishna says, "Love me alone, surrender to me alone, have thoughts only of me," and so on. Now, one may ask, what about after surrender? The answer is, before surrender, you endeavored by doing all the sadhanas to make yourself fit to do the act of surrender to the Lord. And after you have surrendered to the Lord successfully, you do all the sadhanas not to get something from Krishna, but just to elicit his smile, to please him only. God knows whether your surrender is true or not. Actually, if one did asma samarpana in the way it should be done, one may not have this question at all. Once my guru said this: a man surrendered to Krishna and was keeping quiet, not doing anything. Krishna asked him, "Why are you keeping quiet, not doing anything?" The man answered, "Lord, you are in charge of my kshema and moksha. Then why should I do anything?" Krishna replied, "True, you need not do anything for your kshema and moksha, but you can be occupied in my service for the love of serving me, indifferent to kshema and moksha." So, it does not mean that after surrender to Krishna, one can keep quiet or one can live as one likes. No, one should live for God just to please Him and not as a sadhana for moksha. One should live in dharma and not even think of adharma. That is the proof of true surrender. I have seen some people make mistake here. One should not think that after surrender, one can live as one likes. No. After surrender, one should live for God and not for oneself and serve the world. It is pro-God living. Sum up. Generally, devotees are of two types. Devotees who want to get something from God and devotees who only want God. Both of them are different stages. In the beginning of devotion, a soul wants various things from God. When the soul gets matured, it wants God alone. So, before one could make Atma Samarpana to Ishvara, first one should practice the sadhanas until one gets mentally prepared to make Atma Samarpana to Ishvara. Then only one can rightly surrender to Ishvara. Now our soul is contaminated with deluded thoughts. Ishvara Bhakti and all other sadhanas that have been mentioned by Krishna will be helpful to clean our mind. Actually, in truth, the soul is always pure. It cannot get contaminated. But what is really to be purified is our mind, with which we, the souls, are now deludedly attached to. More the mind gets clean, more the soul will reveal its purity and shine. Swami Remaji advises the one who is interested in Sharanagati how to surrender, especially in these modern times. He says, 1. Listen to the words of the wisdom of God. 2. Be firm in one's mind that one is really a conscious being, an Ishvara Putra, and not the body. 3. After Sharanagati, live for God, not for one's egotistic, selfish desires. 4. Live one's life in dharma. This is equal to surrender. Krishna says again and again in the Gita, love me, be devoted to me, do everything as an offering to me. Manmana bhava, madbhakto bhava, mam namaskuru, madarpita karbakuru, and so on. Swami Remaji adds 2 more instructions apart from those 2. One is practice true knowing, and the other one is live as Ishvara Dasa. You have been living so long, misclaiming the body as yours. Now I ask you to live disclaiming it. That is all, says Remaji. To be understood and cherished, living relationship with God and depending on Him totally, pleasing Him by dharmic living is what is wanted for getting His grace. The topic surrender is completed. The final topic is Gita Sara Sangraha. Gita Sara Sangraha, the essence of Gita. Swami Remaji says that Bhagavad Gita was written to correct several mistakes, and one very serious mistake made by people which was being done at the time when Gita was taught. Actually, the mistakes were done even before Krishna's time. Let us take them one by one. The one serious mistake was this. It is in the understanding of the word karma. The word karma has 2 meanings. One is willed action and the other one is latent tendencies. Latent tendencies are called samskaras. So, wherever it has been said in the scriptures that karma binds, people wrongly thought it is the action that binds and tried to stop action. What binds one is the adharmic and dharmic selfish desires. It is true that desire is the cause and action is the effect. But suppressing the effect, that is action, one cannot eradicate the cause, which is desire. This is the big mistake which Krishna corrected through Bhagavad Gita. The next mistake that Krishna pointed out is this: people do not want liberation or moksha and want only enjoyment, bhoga. Even learned people with great intelligence go only for pleasure and do not care for knowing their true identity. Krishna is deadly against this mistake. He says that people are lured by the attractive words of Vedas and neglect Vedanta. Here, it is natural for one to ask a question like this. Sri Krishna says that he is the author of Vedas. He also says one should not go by the attractive words of Vedas, but go only by the Vedanta. Then, why did he give Vedas? He could have given only Vedanta, is it not? This is a legitimate question. The answer is already given in a way almost at the end of the topic Avatar by an example of a son who was sleeping due to taking overdose of sleeping pills and the anxiety of his father to awaken him. To awaken from our primordial slumber, attractions are needed. But once awakened fully, one should live responsibly and strive for self-realization, says Swami Remaji. The other mistake that Sri Krishna pointed out is this: that people do not think of their life in connection with God. They think that they are independent and nothing is there beyond that. That is not correct. Let me quote from the writings of my Guru. You have not tripped and fallen into this world, nor is your life attended by fortuitous circumstances, nor by an eccentric fate, but by the planned strategy of a master who is liberatory, evolutionary strategist. Nowadays, majority of people forget the Creator but go behind the demigods for favors. This is not criticized, but one should know that it will not give liberation. That is why in the topic Tattvatraya, it has been stressed that people should first understand their subjective relation with God within and their objective relation to the world without. Swami Remaji says that one should organize one's life according to the goal of life that scriptures prescribe. We see the world is full of people with various stages in their mental and physical development. Development needs attachment to sense objects. Thickly deluded people need attractive sense objects to keep one's mind bright. The attractions for sense objects will give one both pain and pleasure, and through them one learns what is good, what is not good, what is right and what is not right. When one has learned the lessons sufficiently to go to the next higher stage in the learning, the scene of one's life will automatically change. We all learn and evolve from the dualities of pain and pleasure. The higher learning will commence when one is ready to do the discrimination between eternal and ephemeral. That will lead to liberation. But what is wanted is, until one's delusion gets reduced, the attachment to the sense objects should be there, otherwise we will go back to our primordial slumber. The point is, one should live one's life in dharma. Living in dharma is important. Dharmic living will take one to the higher stages and eventually will make one a serious spiritual sadhaka. So, attachment to life is needed for one to grow until one gets mental maturity, says Swami Remaji. In Kathopanishad, Yamadharma Raja, the god of death, advises young boy Nachiketas about good and pleasure, or Shreyas and Preyas, and ask him to choose the good and discard the pleasure. So, those who want to know their eternal self should discard pleasure and adopt good. There is yet another mistake that Krishna pointed out. It is to worry about the consequences of action and feeling responsible for the result of one's action when they are really of God's. Krishna says in chapter 2, verse 47, Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma palaheturbhuhu ma te sangostva karmani. Shri Krishna says, do not claim the fruit of your action as yours. Just perform your duty without attachment. We have already studied about this. The point is, when we act with self-centered attitude, we should take the responsibility for our action. Only when we act for God or for the world welfare, we need not take responsibility for our action. This is an important point. Gita is a moksha shastra. It gives teachings to both ordinary practitioners and to very matured advanced practitioners. The worldly benefits that it could give are the byproducts. According to Hindu scriptures, good merits will give Swarga and bad will give Naraka. Once the results of good and bad deeds are over, one should be born here in this world again to continue one's journey towards liberation. Krishna speaks about caste system in Gita. In the beginning, there was no caste system. When the society developed to run the society smoothly, the society was divided into 4 divisions. In the chapter 4, verse 13, Shri Krishna himself says, Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam gunakarma vibhagashaha. He says the 4-fold caste system has been created by him according to the differentiation of the attributes and abilities of people to run the society smoothly. Nowhere Krishna said about untouchable. Actually, every human body is created by God, and God resides in the hearts of everybody, including the worst sinners. So, the common way of understanding the caste system is incorrect. Great rishis have been born to Shudra women. Therefore, nothing needs to be changed, but only our understanding of it should be changed, says Swami Remaji. The 4 castes are divided like this. First, those who study Vedas and Shastras and advise Dharma in all situations to all the rest of the people is one group. They are called Brahmins because they study about Brahman. They should keep themselves away from commoners just to keep their body and mind pure. The next group is Kshatriyas, those who have capacity to rule the society. The next group is Vaishyas, those whose minds are sharp in making money. These 3 groups are capable of understanding Dharma and implementing it in one's life. The 4th group of people are those who are called Shudras, who are unable to figure out what is Dharma by themselves. So, they obey the other 3 and work. They mostly do manual work like agriculture, carpentry, house building, constructing roads and such manual work. They should not be considered low by birth. Shri Krishna said the caste system has been given by him to run the society smoothly according to the differentiation of attributes and skills of the people. Like everything else in the world, the human factor intervened in the caste system also. It was misunderstood and mispracticed by people for a long time. In spite of Krishna's telling that it has been divided only according to one's attributes and abilities, people went wrong. In fact, even today, the society is divided into 4 divisions, somewhat like what Krishna did long ago. But the human factors refuses to see it. The damage has been made, but it is slowly getting rectified, but not efficiently and also with hurting each other. The rectifying activity should be done slowly, carefully, and with love. With love and understanding, if we undo our mistake in the caste system, the original intention of Sri Krishna could be restored and the society would run smoothly, says the Swami. Moreover, Sri Krishna did not say anything about hierarchy within the caste system. My Guru once said, thus the entire system of religion and philosophy should be codified, classified, and unified, to do which he had been ushered to this world. Caste is not based on birth, but what you sow, you reap. The law of God or Ishvara Niyati or nature will not go wrong like our computer. One should learn from the results and go higher and finally go beyond duality. Oh, this paves the way to say something about the law of karma. My Guru says every human being, men and women, is eligible to obtain non-dual oneness with God because all are intrinsically souls and not the body, and all the souls are God's offspring. God has conjoined the souls with adjuncts, that is body-mind complex, and is preparing the souls to obtain non-dual oneness with Him. The body-mind complex with which we are connected varies according to our choices. We think we are the body and suffer good and bad. The world is designed like a school where God, the principal, is teaching the souls to choose correctly. We choose according to the thickness of our delusion. We learn from our experience which food is tasty, which cloth is long-lasting, and which one is trustworthy, and so on, and choose the good. Many times we go wrong, and from our mistakes we learn to choose correctly. The teaching will go on until we learn which is eternal and which is ephemeral, according to higher wisdom, until we choose liberation from the I am the body notion as our goal of life and work for it and obtain it. God will be putting us in the school of world by giving us new body until we learn the lesson and also pass the exam. Long ago, a very well-educated lady asked me, "Do you believe in rebirth?" I replied, people who are authority on higher wisdom like Buddha, Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhva, Mahavir, my Guru, and many such great people have said that there is rebirth and everything happens according to one's choices or karma, good and bad. So I believe in rebirth. She kept quiet. Great people do not visit this world just to lie to us. We should remember this. They are really concerned about our well-being. If one's mind refuses to listen to their words, does not matter. The mind will eventually learn and grow. But because one's mind does not agree with them, one should not tamper their words. That is all that great sages and saints want from people in general. We should always remember this. Our real problem is delusion or moha. When Arjuna surrendered to Krishna and asked him to enlighten him, Krishna started teaching Arjuna about the difference between the body and soul, Atma, Anatma, Vivechanam. After teaching about all the various sadhanas, at the end, Shri Krishna asked Arjuna in chapter 18, verse 72. Krishna says, Arjuna, did you listen attentively? Is your delusion gone? So, attentive listening is needed for the removal of delusion. Faith in the divine words is a must. Even scientists have faith in the infallibility of nature. If something goes wrong, in their experiment, they do not curse nature. Instead, they recheck their assumption. God is the Lord of nature. God is the Lord of Prakriti. Arjuna replied to Krishna in chapter 18, verse 73, Nashto mohaha smritir labdha. My delusion is gone. My doubts are gone. So, one should understand and practice all the sadhanas that have been dealt with so far, and after obtaining sufficient chitta shuddhi, either go to a guru who is a Brahmagyani and obtain Brahmagyana, or unconditionally surrender to Krishna and by his grace obtain his abode, Nitya Vibhuti, Parandhama, heaven. They are all synonyms. Let me conclude by giving a short excerpt from Swami Remaji's writings. He says, the world is a Bodhana Kshetra, a place of learning, a Sadhana Kshetra, a place for doing sadhana to obtain non-dual oneness with God. The learning is the discrimination between Atma and Anatma. But before one gets a burning desire to obtain liberation, one should live one's life, earn money and enjoy life, but in dharma. That's all that is wanted. This is very important. The dharmic life will lead one to moksha. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha is the order that ancient wise people taught us to live here peacefully and also eventually obtain eternal peace. Dharma is the starting point of spiritual life, and moksha is the end of spiritual life. Willed practice is needed to live the middle two, that is artha and kama. The middle two will become naturally dharmic after obtaining moksha. Moksha is not death. It is the liberation from the I am the body mental notion. That is all. You are sleeping in heaven and dreaming this earthly life. You as a soul are heavenly being, subjected to beginningless ignorance. Out of compassion for you, the soul, God has created the world to remove the ignorance from you. He conjoined you with a body and also made you, the sleeping soul, a deluded knower and thinker. Through your deluded embodied condition, God is educating you, evolving you, and awakening you to realize your true identity. Through your deluded attachment to your parents, kith and kins, friends, guru, country, and so on, God is evolving your mind. When the time comes, He takes away those attachments in various ways for the sake of your higher development. It is like a mother giving her baby a pacifier to enjoy and takes it away when she thinks it is time to remove it, even when the baby cries. Now you have come of age, and so you should understand the truth of things and steer your lives well. You should understand the purpose behind your entry into this world and live wisely, live a Viveka Jivana. The wonder is you do not even know that you are living a deluded life, let alone live to overcome it. What makes a life a yoga is a radical change in the basic motivation from selfishness to total dedication to God. That complete dedication is truly the let go of the ego. A hero lives for his master, who is his true, real self. This teaching is for all the spiritual aspirants all over the world, says Swami Remaji. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Shri Krishnaya Namaha.